Welcome back, guys. I'm working on a request this time around, and we're working on 3 requests. The first request was to fit my 6-piece skirt. Then the second request, I have to draft a tutorial on my bustier. I made a video on how to join it the right way. Then the third request is the sleeve I made on my crop top corset. So I'm working on 3 things, which I have done the first one by fitting my skirt at the beginning of the video. So the second one is how to draft my bustier. Then this is the blouse I made for my 6-piece skirt, which is similar to the bustier that I made, just that this one has an off-shoulder, is an off-shoulder bustier. So I'm going to demonstrate how to cut the bustier. Then I'm going to now do the sleeve. The sleeve is actually a simple sleeve, but the first thing we need to do is to draft our bustier. So these are the materials I'll be using. I'll be using from my drafting paper, my ruler, my sellotape, then pencil, eraser, then the marking pen, then my chalk, my paper, scissors, then with my tape, guys. So these are the material we are going to be using. So let's get started, guys. I'm going to place my paper on my cutting mat, tape it, then I'm going to highlight some lines before we start, because we're actually going to be using the basic bodice. Any basic bodice can work. So guys, as you can see, I've highlighted some lines. I moved in from the center of the paper by 2 inches to be able to get my straight line. Then from the top edge of the paper, I moved down by 2 inches to enable me get my straight line. Then what I did was to use one of the biggest part of my measurements, which is between the bust or the hip or the waist, depending on the client you are working with. But in this situation, it was the hip that is bigger, so I divided it into 2 plus 2 inches allowance to be able to have room to work on my basic bodies. As you can see here, I have the chest line, the armhole depth, the bust point, the under bust point, the waist line, and the length of my bustier that I need. For the back, I don't need the bust point, I don't need the under bust, but I need the waistline and the armhole depth. So those are the things you are seeing here. For the neck depth and the neck width, we actually doesn't need it in the bustier, but just to highlight what we need. But in the case for those who doesn't know how to draft a basic bodice, the neck depth I normally use is my bust divided by 8 plus 1 in brackets divided by 2, while my armhole depth is bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. So those are all I have done here. You can see that for the shoulder, I moved from the top edge of the paper down to the armhole depth, but for the back, I did not move down. There are things I need to some tips I need to share with you guys so that you're well informed. See, from my paper, you can see that the front length is longer than the back. And if you have watched some of my previous tutorial, like the corset that I did, I said the back length and the front length are never the same, but not in all cases. There are sometimes that the back length and the front length might be the same. What actually causes the back length and the front length not to be the same is that the bust, our bust displays the tape. So the fuller the front, the smaller the back length you will have, or the sway of the back. So it depends. Some ladies are just straight in the front and straight in the back. So such people, you could just use your back length to get everything, and the length will be the same. In such case, you don't need the bust that. But in the case where the front length is longer than the back length, you will surely need the bust that. So what I'm going to do next is to mark my bust span, which is 7 inches. I normally add 1, so I divide it by 2, which makes it 4. So that's what I'm going to mark right away, right from my chest line down to the length of my bustier or top, whatever. So I'll mark the 4. Okay guys, I think I will use my pencil first, so that if there's any mistake, I can erase it. Then I will now highlight with my marker. So the next thing to do now is to mark my bust, my waist, and my hip measurements on the length. So that's what I'm going to do. The measurements required are this, which is the bust, the waist, the under bust, the bust point, the under bust, the top, the bustier length, the hip, the shoulder, the front length, the back length, the bust part, the chest, so I've written it on the screen as you can see it right away. So I've divided my bust into 4, so I'm going to use 8.5 on my armhole depth and my bust point. So I'm going to mark that, which is 8.5, 8.5. Then my under bust is 27, which is 6 3/4. So I'm going to mark that on my under bust measurements. Then the waist is 25, so which is 6/4. 6/4, yes. So I'm going to mark that. Then the hip measurement, the hip circumference is 37, which divide by 4, I have 9/4. Okay, so I'm going to mark the same thing on my back measurements, which is 9/4. The waist is 6.25, which is 6/4. Then the bust is 8.5. So those are the measurements. So I'm going to connect everything first. I'm going to just connect it with my pencil on a dash line first, as you can see, so that I'll be able to show you guys what we need. And I'm going to connect the bust and the hip together so that we can see what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm trying to show the shape of the body, then we will know the gapings that we need to remove. So for this, we'll see the difference. That's why I'm marking with pencil. Then I'm going to connect my hip to my bust. Okay guys, so as you can see now, this is our waist and this is the gap between the waist and the hip. The same thing happens to the bust area. This is the gap that we have. The same thing happens to the under bust. This is the gap we have between the hip and the bust. So this is what we need to remove to be able to get this shape of the body. The same thing for the back. Now there's what we call waist shaping. So the waist shaping is what we're going to use. We're not going to use what we call the dash that we normally do. We will add 1 inch, then we'll start shaping it. No, what we'll do is we'll remove this gap from our waist and this gap from our under bust, sharing them differently. Now the points that we're going to remove them is, we're going to remove from the side, we're going to create a dart, then we're going to remove from the bulge of the back for the center back. Then for the front, we're going to remove from 3 points, which is going to be at our bust band that we divided, which is the dart, then from the side. So for the back now, I'm going to create the bust band too. I'm going to use the bust band. Sometimes you can use the across back and divide it into 2, but I normally love to use the bust band because it's approximately the same thing. Okay guys, so as we can see now what we have here. So let me start from the back. So if you should measure it, as you can see, this is 2 3/4. If you guys can see, this is 2 3/4. So this is the gaping we need to remove to shape our waistline. I'm going to divide it into 4 points. So I'm going to remove part of it from the bulge of the back of the waistline. Then I'm going to remove one from the side. Then what is remaining is going to be divided as the darts that we're going to remove from the waistline. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to divide this 2 3/4 into 4. So as you can see, so I've divided into 4. I will mark 1 here. I'll mark 1 here. I'll mark 1 here, and I'll mark 1 here. So it's no longer the half inch we normally say we should remove. So if you should measure it now, you can see that it's more than ½ inch. It's by 0.6. So for this measurement, so you will see that there are some people, some bigger people, that you might use half, you might use 3/4 inches. So with this now, I'm going to connect to my armhole depth. Then I'll connect to my hip line, which is the length of the top. So this bulge now, I'm going to connect it this. So as you can see, guys, we have marked it. So what I'm going to do now is to connect this to the armhole depth and connect this to the hip. So now I'm going to erase this so that we no longer need this. Okay, you can see now that at this point there is a gaping that we have removed from our bust measurement. So we're going to replace it on this point. So I'm going to measure it now, which is 0.3, almost half an inch. So I'm going to replace it on this point now and connect back. For this, I'm going to measure 7.3 because of this gaping. So this is 7 before, that's why I didn't mark it. So I'm going to mark 7.3 now because I'm going to add this gaping that is here now. We're going to replace it at this point. So before I will connect. Okay, so as you can see, we're almost done with the back before we will now take care of the front. So now at the across back, this in between here, we'll mark our across back. I'm kind of doing a basic bodice plus a bustier because actually I don't need to be doing this. It's just to go straight to the bustier, but I'm kind of trying to teach some things. Okay, so guys, for the front now, we still have the same 2 3/4 inches for the gaping between the hip and the bust and the waist area. So now we're going to divide this, just like I said, the waist shaping. The waist shaping can be into 12 points, it can be into 8 points, especially when we are creating all these corsets these days. You can shape into different points to be able to have different pieces, just the same way in the front. So but this one, we're just creating a bustier. So now the 2 3/4 that I'm going to have here now, I'm dividing it into 3 in between our waistline. So I'm going to use 1 for the side seam. I'm going to remove 1 out of this point. Then the remaining 1 3/4, I'm going to divide it into 2. So I'm going to divide it in between the darts, the bust span line. So as you can see, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to connect the side seam to the bust area. Guys, don't get confused, it's a little bit technical, but I'm trying to give you guys the main points, the areas you can get your fitting right. So from the waist now, I'm going to connect half an inch below the bust point. You can do 3/4 inch if the person is a very busty person, but for this person is just bust 34 inches. Sometimes some bust 34 is different from individuals. Some people have very big busts and they are 34 but smaller side and back, while some people have a wider back but small bust. So guys, I've created the dart, so I'm going to rub off this after creating that. I'm still going to use my marker, but I just want us to get everything right. That's why I'm using pencil first before I will use the marker, and I will explain again. So we are finished with our waist shaping, as you can see. So now what we need to do is to reconfirm our waist if we have gotten our right waist. So I'm going to measure between this. So this is 3.5. If you can see it from the camera, then what is remaining here, okay, as you can see, is 2 3/4. So when you add it together, that will give us our 6.25. So I'm going to do the same thing for the front to check if it's correct. This is 3.25. This is 3 inches. So guys, you can see that we have gotten our waist. So guys, I'm going to check the under bust now to be able to confirm if we are still going to have our 6.75 from our measurements, because that was 27. So you have to confirm that. So I will confirm that now to be able to shape for our princess cut. So what I have here now from this point is 3.5. Okay, so I will check this side again. So we're having 3.75, which is more than 6.75. so now this is 3.5. then what I will need now is 3.25, so to be able to know what is left. So guys, as you can see, we have half an inch left. So the half an inch now we're going to use it to shape our bust area. So I'm going to divide that half an inch in between this point. So for this point, I'm going to divide it equals. I'm going to move 2.5 here, then move in 2.5 here. Okay guys, as you can see, so I'm going to connect to the waist area. Okay, so the next thing is to shape from our bust point to our under bust. So okay, guys, so guys, we are going to reconfirm the under bust now. So for here now we have 3.25, then from here now we have 3.5, so that makes 6.75. so we have gotten our under bust tightening. So the next thing is to go to my chest line to be able to create my bustier. So at the chest line, I'm going to move out by 3/4 of an inch here, by 3/4 of an inch. That's what I'm going to mark. 3/4 inches, 3/4 inches. So I'm going to connect to my bust point area. I'm going to connect from my bust point. Okay guys, so this chest line now, my chest circumference is 32, so I'm supposed to have 8 around this area, and I've removed 1.5 from here. So the 1.5, I'm going to add it back to this point, then I will connect to my bust point area. I hope I'm not confusing you guys, but this is the right thing I normally do. So I'm going to rub this off now. I'll now highlight the lines so that you guys can see what I've done so far using another marker. I think I should use another marker. Let me use green. So I've highlighted all my lines, so I'm going to remove this. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to connect my armhole. Let me connect the armhole so that I don't need to do much shaping around this area. I'm just going to connect armhole to my chest line. So now I'm going to cut this off so that we'll be able to get our bust that point, to be able to create our bustier very well. Now for this chest line, actually I use 7 from the shoulder line, 7 inches. You can go beyond 7 inches if you want. You can do 8, you can do 9, depending on the cleavage you want to show. So you can measure it from the neck depth, maybe 5, 6, depending. Then you connect this way and connect this way. But in this case, as you can see, this that I did is just straight, so there was no cleavage that is going to show. But in this, I did a little bit of deep inside. Now there's another thing I want to highlight here. As you can see, this bustier off shoulder, you can see that it is flat, and you can see that this is raising up a little bit. This is raising up a little bit. It depends on the design you want to create. When you want to have such like this that is flat, what I normally do is I will connect this from this waistline and make it straight. Then whatever I remove here, I connect it back at the hip line. So I will make it a little bit flat so that to hide your tummy a little bit, to hold it down, and you put baby bone in if you want. But this will raise up at least to give your stomach area some breathing space. Let's continue. So I said what we'll do now is I'm going to cut out to be able to create my bust that area. So let me cut out. Okay, so from the bust point now, I'm going to mark my bust, the front length, the excess of the front length and the back length, which is in this case it is 1 inch. There sometimes it is 1.5. It can be more than 1.5, 2 inches, depending on the individual you measure. So I'm going to connect that to this point, moving away by 1/2 inch because it's a smaller bust. But if it's a bigger bust, you can move away by 3/4 inch. So I'm going to fold my paper now. I'm going to fold the bust out. I'm going to fold it up before I will cut. So I've done that. So the next thing is to connect this to the armhole and connect. Now for the back depth, depends on what you want. It can be 9, it can be 10, depending. If it's going beyond 9, 10, you know that you still need to remove some excess in that area. So we should take note of that. The more you dip, the more gaping you need to remove. So in this case, I'm just going to make maybe 9.5 depths the back. So from there I'm going to connect with to the armhole of the front. So okay guys, I've done that. Now for this, you can see, just like I said, you can shape as you want. You can come down more and shape this way if that's what you want. So you shape more, connecting this way, and you're moving this way. So depends on what you want. Then for the side, you can still shape, you can still move up. You can see that we have the same length now for our bustier, but if you want a curvy, you can still move maybe up. That one is, you are giving this shape now. It doesn't necessarily mean is what is needed for your fitting. Just you want to give the bustier some shape. You don't want it straight, so in that case just shape it this way. Now some of this sometimes remove some wrinkles at the side, so that's part of the shaping. So guys, let's cut our bustier. Now around this bust point, just so you can remove maybe like 1/4 inch when you are cutting. You can see just a little. Okay guys, so you notch this area to relax that bust area. It adds volume. Okay, now for this, you straighten before you cut out. From this point now, you can add your sewing allowance. I'm going to use 1 inch or 1/4 so that to have more room, because you need 1/2 inch around this area. So I'm going to add my sewing allowance. So I've finished cutting the front, guys. Then for the back, I've added sewing allowance too. I've added zip allowance, so I will just 1/4. Okay, so cut out. So guys, our pattern is ready. Most times I don't cut the back, so I will leave it this way. Then I will just notch when I want to sew, so that I will know the point to sew. Leave it this way, then I'll just cut it maybe in the material if I wish to. So the next thing for us is just to notch all our points. Notch, so that when we place in the fabric, we'll be able to know the points where we're supposed to join together. That notching is very, very necessary, guys. So this is our bustier. This is the side seam. So as you can see, so this is it. Our bustier is ready. So this is bustier, this is zip allowance. So that is that, guy. So the next thing we're going to do is to cut our sleeve that my subscriber asked me to cut. So let's do that, guys. So if there's any question, please drop it in the comment section below. I'm just a minute away from you guys.